50-year-old Mark Latunski remains jailed without bond, charged in Bacon's death.
There's so many signs along the way.
A half-naked man was reported running from Latunski's home in November. I sat down with Latunski's husband, Jamie Arnold, who says he had no knowledge or involvement in Bacon's death.
On Christmas Eve 2019, 25-year-old trainee hairstylist Kevin Bacon from Swartz Creek, Michigan, leaves his house for a date with a 50-year-old man who himself lives in the small rural town of Bennington, Michigan. 3 days later, the young man's body is found hanging upside down in the basement of his date's home with the throat slit and with bits missing. The murder and mutilation of Mr. Bacon by divorced father of four Mark Latunski has got to be the most shocking and gruesome crime to come out of Michigan for decades. Do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. To the outside world, the perpetrator seemed like an ordinary individual, his 12-year marriage, as I mentioned, having spawned no fewer than 4 children. However, behind closed doors, the perpetrator led a double life. He was active on dating apps like Grindr, a platform where men can connect with other men for sexual encounters. But in the perpetrator's case, such online interactions would take a much darker turn. The perpetrator then was known to use these platforms to seek out men for casual sex. But what was hidden beneath his digital persona was a deeply disturbing obsession. While he kept a relatively private life, reports suggest that the man had a history of mental health struggles, and some individuals close to the man reported that he often expressed dark fantasies. More details on the perpetrator's mental health issues and his sick fantasies are to follow. Kevin Bacon, meanwhile, had an open and loving family with whom he had reconnected over the Christmas holidays of 2019. Mr. Bacon was last seen leaving his family's home for a date with a man that he'd met on the Grindr app. Having not heard from Mr. Bacon by the next morning, however, and having consequently since become frantic with worry, his family reported him missing. The police search for Mr. Bacon led them soon enough to the perpetrator's home. What they discovered at the very Tyrrell Road property on the 28th of December 2019 was nothing short of horrific. Mr. Bacon's lifeless body was found in the perpetrator's basement. The young man had been stabbed multiple times and had had his throat slashed. But the horror didn't end there, since it was rapidly discovered that the perpetrator had also mutilated Kevin's body and cannibalised parts of it, namely all his genitalia. To be exact, the perpetrator had made Mr. Bacon's penis and testicles into a fry-up. The perpetrator also divulged to the police that he'd been planning to use his victim's blood and bones as plant fertiliser, while his intended use for Mr. Bacon's muscles was as the ingredients for jerky. Suspending Mr. Bacon's body upside down from the ceiling was, some psychological experts say, the perpetrator's way of exercising dominance over his victim, even after the young man's death, Mr. Bacon having already been dead before this particular act. These grotesque details stunned the public and left many struggling to comprehend how someone could commit such unspeakable deeds. The divorce filings by the perpetrator's ex-wife, Emily Latunski, detail the perpetrator's 2 prior diagnoses from 2010 and 2012 respectively of severe recurrent and chronic major depression with psychotic features, adjustment disorder with depression, anxiety with paranoid schizophrenia, and borderline personality traits. The man's condition can be treated with medication, but according to his former wife, the man has a history of not taking it. In a 2013 filing, 2013 being when her divorce from the perpetrator was granted, Emily Latunski reported that when the perpetrator didn't take his medicine, he'd watch torture and horror movies, talk to himself, stay out all night, threaten to get rid of his children's animals, claim their son wasn't his child, and fail to shower and shave. Emily also claimed that the perpetrator kidnapped his own children by failing to follow custody plans, kept her and her children from leaving the home, made frivolous claims to Child Protective Services, and alleged that she and her brother were trying to murder him by poisoning a well. It was discovered, moreover, that Mr. Bacon was not the perpetrator's first target. A man called James Carlson filed a federal lawsuit against the perpetrator in 2020, in which he claimed that the man had chained him up in his basement in October of 2019. After escaping, he called 911. In November of that same year, another man whose name isn't known fled similarly from the perpetrator's home. On calling 911, the man reported, quote, "I'm trying to get away from some creepy guy. He had me tied up in his basement," unquote. I don't know what the police response to those two complaints were, but it looks like these were two missed opportunities to stop the perpetrator becoming a vicious, cannibalistic killer.
I never thought he was capable of such a horrendous crime.
Jamie Arnold talking about his husband of several years, Mark David Latunski. At Latunski's December 30th arraignment on charges related to Bacon's murder, Latunski claimed he was someone else.
My name is Edgar Thomas Hill.
I asked Jamie if this behavior was what he witnessed from Latunski before he moved out of their shared home in September.
There's so many signs along the way.
That you never saw at all during your relationship?
Not this, no. Yes, that there was something wrong.
It's not the first time police have been to Latunski's home in recent months. A half-naked man was reported running from Latunski's home in November. Michigan State Police determined that no criminal activity took place and said anything that happened was consensual.
Consensual? Like fuck! It's unclear what exactly led the perpetrator to commit his heinous acts. Some reports, however, suggest that, in line with his taste for extreme and violent pornography, his obsession with extreme sexual fantasies played a major role. Some former acquaintances of the perpetrator reported that the man had made disturbing comments in the past about cannibalism and violence. Again, though, it's unclear whether these were simply fantasies or part of a deeper and more dangerous urge. Whatever the cause of the perpetrator's acts were, his crimes against Mr. Bacon fill us all with shock, horror and disgust.
That breaking news, life without the possibility of parole. That's the sentence given to Mark Latunski for the murder and mutilation of 25-year-old Kevin Bacon. Latunski pleaded guilty to killing and mutilating Bacon in December of 2019.
The perpetrator's arrest led to an intense legal battle. The man was charged with first-degree murder, mutilation of a corpse and other serious offences. His trial was particularly high-profile because of the nature of the crime and the debate over his mental competency to stand trial. Many wondered if his mental health could be a mitigating factor. The relief that the perpetrator may have felt on being declared mentally incompetent to stand trial in 2020 didn't last. In 2021, in a reversal of its decision from 2020, the court deemed the perpetrator competent to stand trial. On subsequently being found guilty of first-degree murder, as well as of all his other charges, the perpetrator was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. We're all glad about that, but of course, the pain and grief of Mr. Bacon's family and friends will never, ever end. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.